Sometimes the only thing that keeps us going is a small flicker of light we can't quite explain. A memory, a word, a moment of silence that suddenly feels safe. In the middle of the darkness, that flicker reminds us life hasn't left. Something still breathes beneath the rubble. And that tiny spark is more powerful than we think. Acceptance is not surrender, it's strength. It's the decision to stop fighting what already happened and begin shaping what will come next. It's when we say, "This is my reality," and "I will face it with open eyes." That's when things shift. Not because the problem disappears, but because we stop wasting energy on resisting it and start investing in transforming it. Resilience is like a muscle. You don't find it, you build it. And strangely, it often grows in silence. In the mornings when you don't want to get out of bed, but do anyway. In the decisions no one sees, but you make with integrity. In the days that feel ordinary, yet shape you in extraordinary ways. Pain, when surrendered, becomes a tool in God's hands. He doesn't always remove the fire, but He walks with you through it. The Bible doesn't promise a life without trouble, but it does promise that through every trial there is grace. And that grace doesn't just help you survive, it helps you grow. Being vulnerable isn't weakness, it's honesty. It's saying, "This hurts, and I'm not okay, but I still believe something good can come from this." That kind of courage has a power most people never understand. It invites healing. It invites connection. And more than anything, it invites transformation. Help doesn't always look the way we expect. Sometimes it's a friend showing up at just the right time. Sometimes it's a stranger's words or a memory that suddenly carries new meaning. If you pay close attention, you'll notice God often speaks in whispers. And every whisper is a step out of the darkness. Eventually, something inside you shifts. You begin to see with different eyes. The same situation, the same pain, but now there's a crack of light. You no longer ask, "Why me?" You start asking, "What now?" And that question opens a door to the life that's been waiting for you. There's life after the pain. Not the same life as before, a deeper one. One that no longer runs from discomfort or tries to fake perfection, but one that embraces authenticity. Because when you walk through something real, you come out more real. You no longer wear masks. You live with purpose. Wounds don't disappear. They evolve. They stop bleeding. They become part of your story, not the end of it, but the middle. And eventually, those wounds become wisdom. They remind you where you've been, and more importantly, who you've become. And through it all, faith grows. Not because everything makes sense, but because, somehow, you're still standing. You prayed, you cried, you waited, and maybe you didn't get the answer you wanted, but you got what you needed, a deeper trust, a quiet strength, and a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. There are moments in life when something breaks. It doesn't make noise, but you feel it deep inside. A relationship ends. A dream collapses. A certainty disappears. And in that silence, you're left with only one question. Why? It feels like life itself has turned against you. Like everything you built is crumbling at once. And no matter how much you try to hold it together, nothing seems to stop the fall. It's not just the problem that hurts, it's the confusion, the feeling of being lost. With no light to follow in the beginning, the heart resists. It clings to what used to be. You try to fix the broken pieces, as if pretending everything is normal could make it real again. But the truth doesn't vanish just because you look away. And often, it's in this denial that the real suffering begins. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like shouting, even though no sound would come out? That scream that no one hears, but you feel it echoing in your chest? That's your soul trying to make sense of the chaos. You're not crazy. You're not weak. You're human. And this storm you're in, yes, this one has something to teach you. Thank you for staying with me until now. That already tells me something about your courage. And believe me, the best part of this journey is still ahead. What you're about to hear might not be easy, but it will make sense. Sometimes problems act like mirrors. They reflect not what's around us, but what's inside. The fear we've been avoiding, the truth we've been postponing, the parts of ourselves we've buried to survive. And now, with nowhere left to hide, we're forced to look, not at the world, but at ourselves. The most painful problems are often invitations. Strange, isn't it? We think they're punishment, when in truth, they're a chance. A push towards something we never would have chosen alone, something better. But first, we have to let go. We have to loosen our grip on what once made sense. Only then can we receive the new path being offered. You see, nothing gets rebuilt without first being taken apart. That's why it breaks. That's why it falls. That's why the pain comes. Not to destroy you, but to prepare the foundation for something stronger. And I know it's hard to believe when everything around you feels like ashes. But sometimes, that's the only place where rebirth can happen. And what about those moments when even God seems silent? When no answer comes, no comfort arrives, and all that's left is waiting? That silence is not abandonment. It's refinement. It's God working not on your situation, but on your soul. Because before he fixes the storm outside, he wants to strengthen the one inside. We often search for gold in the wrong places. We look for joy in comfort, peace in control, purpose in routine. But life has a way of hiding its greatest treasures in the messiest rooms, in the tears, in the disappointments, in the prayers that feel unanswered. If you're willing to dig, to sit in the discomfort, to ask the deeper questions, you will find something priceless hidden there. And here's the turning point. Every problem offers a choice. You can let it make you bitter, or let it make you better. You can build walls or open doors. The problem is just the stage. The real transformation happens in your response. And it starts with a single, honest question. What is this here to teach me? Your pain gives you a mission. You no longer walk through life casually. You begin to notice others who are struggling. You carry a message, not because you read it in a book, but because you lived it. And that kind of message carries weight. It heals. It comforts. It matters. Out of your own struggle, compassion is born. You no longer judge others by appearances. You see deeper. You recognize the quiet battles behind polite smiles. You become someone who doesn't rush to fix, but chooses to sit beside. That is the power of someone who has suffered and survived. Eventually, the answers come. Maybe not all of them, but enough to let you breathe again. Enough to help you see how it was all connected. The pain, the detours, the people, the timing. It's not about having it all figured out. It's about finally trusting that it never needed to make sense to be meaningful. And then the gift is revealed. The very thing that broke you becomes the source of your strength. The weakness you tried to hide becomes your connection to others. The season you thought had no purpose becomes the foundation of your calling. It was never just about pain. It was about purpose. Gratitude rises from the ashes. Not the surface level kind, but the deep kind. The kind that says, thank you, even for that. You don't have to love the pain to honor what it gave you. You don't have to go through it again to know it made you who you are. Control begins to lose its grip. You stop needing to manipulate every outcome. You start trusting the process, even when the path isn't clear. You surrender not because you've given up, but because you've grown up. That's the freedom no one can steal from you. And then you see it, the purpose that stretches beyond the problem. the bigger picture, the thread connecting your story to something eternal. You realize you're not the center, but you are a vital part of a much greater design. And that gives even the smallest moment meaning. Your perspective shifts. You stop looking at life from the ground. You begin to see it from above, from the mountaintop built with every step you took through the valley. What once looked like failure now looks like formation. What once looked like loss now looks like grace. There is lightness in what once felt heavy. You still remember the pain, but it no longer defines you. You carry it, yes, but not as a wound, as wisdom. And wisdom doesn't weigh you down. It lifts you up. Memory becomes a sanctuary, not a prison. You return to your past, not to relive the pain, but to remember the lessons. You speak of what happened not with bitterness, but with clarity. The story hasn't changed, but the storyteller has. Waiting teaches us in ways nothing else can. It strips away our impatience. It breaks down our illusions of control. It makes space for trust to grow. And while waiting, we often discover that what's being shaped is not the situation, but the person we are becoming in the process. Time has a wisdom we can't always grasp in the moment. What feels like delay is often protection. What seems like silence is preparation. The seasons we label as waste may, one day, be the very ground where something sacred was planted. Eventually, the mirror becomes clearer. You start to see not just the pain you carried, but the strength you gained, the endurance, the depth, the compassion. It was always there, but now you believe it. Now you walk with it. Now you own it. Moving forward doesn't require knowing every step. It only requires the willingness to take the next one. Even if your hands still shake, even if your heart still hurts. Courage is not about confidence. It's about showing up despite the fear. Something inside you begins to rise. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady, quiet, unshakable. A version of yourself that couldn't have existed without the storm. A version that understands grace. A version that refuses to settle for numbness. The blessings we miss are often the ones that saved us. The closed doors, the delays, the people who left. We didn't understand them then. We fought them. But now, looking back, we see them for what they were. Divine redirection. There is value in things we cannot touch, in patience, in character, in presence. These are the treasures pain uncovers. They don't rust. They don't fade. They're stored deep inside, and once found, they become part of your soul's foundation. Out in the quiet, we grow. Not everything that's silent is empty. Sometimes the silence is where the roots go deeper, where clarity settles in, where the soul breathes without distraction. Don't fear those quiet spaces. Honor them. They're sacred. Pain moves in cycles. It arrives. It breaks. It softens. It teaches. And then it passes. Sometimes it revisits to show you how much you've grown. But it never comes without reason. Every visit carries a lesson. Every lesson holds a gift. Eventually, you start to see the fruit. Not immediately. Not all at once. But little by little, the things that once crushed you begin to bless you. You speak with more kindness. You listen with more depth. You live with more meaning. You walk a different path now. Not because everything is perfect, but because you've been changed. You see the world through a different lens. One that notices the beauty in the ordinary. One that no longer takes peace for granted. One that cherishes quiet victories. Every scar you carry has a story, not of defeat, but of deliverance. Not of how you were broken, but how you were made whole. You wear them not to prove anything, but to remind yourself of how far you've come, and how much grace it took to get here. Your story becomes your strength, not just for you, but for others. You begin to speak, to write, to reach out, not because you're trying to be inspirational, but because you know what it feels like to be in the dark. And now you carry a light. The anger fades. The bitterness softens. You stop asking why it had to happen and start asking how you can use it. You realize that peace doesn't come from answers. It comes from surrender, from trust, from choosing. Love even after pain. There is a kind of peace that goes beyond logic. It doesn't deny the pain. It transcends it. It wraps around you in moments when you least expect it. It calms the questions. It silences the fear. It reminds you that you're not alone, that you never were. Forgiveness begins to flow, not just to others, but to yourself. You let go of the need to be perfect. You release the guilt. You stop punishing yourself for not knowing what you couldn't have known back then. And with that release, healing begins to bloom. You reap the harvest. Now, the patience, the faith, the perseverance. It wasn't wasted. Every silent prayer, every tear, every step taken in the dark, they all counted. And now, you see the fruit, not just in what you've gained, but in who you've become. In the darkness, you became a light. Not because you never broke, but because you refused to stay broken. You learned to rise, to rebuild, to begin again. And now, your very presence carries the quiet strength of someone who has truly lived. The legacy is clear, not of perfection, but of redemption. Not of ease, but of endurance. You've shown that problems don't have to define us, they can refine us. And in doing so, you've left a trail of hope for others to follow. And now, with everything said and done, one truth remains. Each problem has a positive side. It may not be visible at first. It may not come easy. But if you look close, if you walk with faith, if you refuse to give up, you will find it. And when you do, you'll never see problems the same way again.